Parrtjima respectfully acknowledges the past, present and emerging custodians and ancestors of Mbantua, Alice Springs. We recognise the Marikatwi, traditional owners, the Kurulunga, caretakers of the land on which we gather tonight. They hold the traditional rights to speak for these regions, and we honour their guidance, advice and blessings for Parrtjima. It is great to see so many people here tonight at the Desert Park experiencing the magic of Parrtjima and immersing yourselves in our shared culture. Home to the amazing signature light installations and the ranges, lights and sound spectacular, the Desert Park Parrtjima site is open every evening from 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. The theme for Parrtjima 2023 is Listening with a Heart. Inspired by the artwork surrounding the statement from the heart, Listening with Heart embodies the concept of coming together, meeting, and taking the time to contemplate and reflect in the beautiful red centre. There is a growing realisation across the nation that Australia has something incredibly unique, the world's oldest living, adapting culture. And Parrtjima is an invitation from our First Peoples, asking us all to walk together and build a better future. The festival's theme resonates throughout this year's program of live music, talks, films, entertainment and workshops. Every night we will explore what Listening with Heart represents to some of Australia's leading Aboriginal artists, musicians, writers and personalities. Thank you for joining us tonight and what has become an annual collective of voices from around the nation. Our Parrtjima curator, Roberts, will speak with the incredible Stephen Oliver. Stephen's stories, writings and clever use of terminology will make us all think and reflect. Quite a few people laugh, then cry, then laugh some more. Through the belly laughs, there is often a shock factor. But for this cookie lungi, sorry, I'm going to try my best, as big as mob tribes. Oh my goodness, I'm already going to. Gangalida, Wanyi, Wapabara, Bunjalung, Biripi, Irish, Sri Lankan and South Sea Islander man from the small town of Cloncurry, always reminding us we have more similarities than differences. Please join me in welcoming Rhoda Roberts, our wonderful curator, and Stephen Oliver.
And can we just give a beautiful warm welcome, who's joining us every night for our speakers program, Anyapa Emily Butcher. She is one of our future leaders and she's just incredible. And I'm sorry that I was talking while Anyapa was doing that, but Miss Hurley at the back, there are some reserved seats for you to come down the front, and Rosie, a big thank you to Rosie, will bring you down. So if you, yeah.
Can I just say, when I saw you out of the corner of my eye, I wasn't trying to let you draw my focus, but out of the corner of my eye, it looked like you were going.
Oh, yes. Anyway, everyone, a big welcome. We'd also like to... Oh, I'm Rhoda and that's Stephen, just in case.
It's that Bunjalung connection.
That Bunjalung connection, naturally. I'd just like to, again, say thank you to everyone, but particularly our reference group, and we're joined with Arnie, Patricia Ansel Dodson tonight. Dodds, you're not related to Patrick. Who's joining us, who's part of our reference group. And I have to say, every time we come to country here, we are so warmly welcomed. And the reference group that works with Parrtjima is actually our cultural guides, and they just make us feel so safe and at home. So I just want to just acknowledge them and, of course, the country that we're on. So... Stephen, yeah, you just want to belong to every mob.
I do. I'm one of them who claim everybody. I had a friend get wild with me once because he had to change the font size on his text. He's like, can't you just claim two? I'm like, no, that's disrespectful. I got to claim them all.
An incredible country from, the northern rivers, the mid-north coast, right up to Queensland. And a bit like the number of nations you have, it's also the jobs you've had. Some extraordinary work. But I think what everyone here probably knows Stephen from, and dare I say it, is, of course, ABC, black comedy. And we saw the way that the use of language that often was seen quite negatively being used in humour from a blackfella perspective to just simply ask, what's this then, slut? So can you just take us, because my kids came home from school and they said, we saw Uncle Stephen on the TV. And I'm like, don't say that word. And so I had to go and actually watch the skit. So can you tell us where that idea came and why?
Well, when I originally wrote that, the idea behind that sketch was, it was about, when mob have arguments, but sometimes they'll just bring up something that has nothing to do with the argument. So, it'd be like if someone was like seeing someone else's man, and then they'd be growling about that man, and then, the other one will just bring up something, anyway, you can't even cook. That was the kind of original idea behind it. But then when we filmed it, and then, I just kind of wrote that line, well, what's this then, slut? But then when me and Aaron acted it out, then Aaron did it back, and then so me and him just kind of kept doing it, and then one of the producers, because we did it in the pilot when we shot the pilot, and the Can't Even Dance was the very original one, and then one of the producers from the pilot said, I think there's something in there. You should write one for every episode. So then I wrote one for every episode, and then of course we got season 2, and then when season 2 happened, but I didn't want it to just kind of be the same thing. I wanted to have a narrative this time, because marriage equality was a big thing at the time too. So I kind of used it as a vehicle to talk about marriage equality and how the fact that titters, like, even if you go back now, it seems crazy to go back and watch it. But even though it's only a couple of years ago, the titters had to fly to New Zealand to get married. They couldn't even get married in their own country. So, yeah.
And can I just acknowledge that was an extraordinary piece of work, that particular series. And of course, one of the titters was the late, great Mr. David Page.
And you know what? I'm so grateful for that, because me and David always said we were going to work together. And originally, when I wrote that, that was meant to be played by Taika Waititi.
Oh.
So what happened was that...
Does everyone know who Taika is?
Yeah, so because Taika's a fan of the titters, when he first saw that, he actually shared it on his Facebook page. But that's how I ended up in Thor.
Oh, what did you play in Thor?
I played Cousin Carl. I get murdered by the Grandmaster. I'm in it for like 30 seconds, but
that's
yeah.
all right. It's not about the size of the part.
No, that's why.
It's what
I was looking at. I'm sitting across from Chris Hemsworth, going, "Oh my god!" Like, I'm acting, but in my head I'm thinking, "I can't believe I'm sitting across from Chris Hemsworth." But they were really loved. But yeah, no. So it was originally we were going to go to New Zealand, and it was going to be like the Maori titters that we ran into. But then because of scheduling, Taika couldn't do it. So then that's when I rewrote it, and we got David and Ian to play the other couple.
Look, I want to talk about so many things you've done, because Fab Original. I just love the way that Stephen takes language and words and shifts it and twists it. But behind it is actually quite strategic and very political. But I really want to just go back, because often we see our comedians and they're always there providing us laughter, and we think everything's hunky-dory. But often great humour comes from great pain. And Stephen, you wrote a piece, so you're a writer, you're a poet, tap dancer, amongst many things. But you recently wrote a piece, and it just struck such a chord with me. But it also really emphasised, I guess, the presence of matriarchs in our world. So would you mind just telling us that little moment that possibly changed an element in your life as a young boy when you boarded that train with your mum?
Oh, well, I think I've always seen the strength of women, but more so from the strength of my mother. Um, my mother, she had given birth to 7 children by the time she was 23 years old. And that being said, she lost 2 boys. And without getting sad for my mother, but the story she tells me about where she sat up in the hospital and was just treated like a black gin when she lost one of the boys. And you hear those kind of stories about your mother, and you see stuff, where the man on the train said to her, "Oh, I don't know about you black people, but us white people like to shower." And just, me being like an 8-year-old child, and that stuck with me. Just that. I still remember that old man, what he looked like. I still remember the tears in my mother's eyes. But you see all of that growing up, and that was the thing. My mother grew us all up. Do you know what I mean? She became a mother at 15. She had me at 17. But she grew us up, and she didn't go and do what she wanted to do in life until we were all like adults and we were all doing our own thing. So that's why I'm a very thing about us, and I think that's often unseen, that strength of black women. I think it's often unseen that how black women often hold not just a home but a community together a lot of the times, and I think it's kind of unspoken. So and that's why I think with my mother, I'm very, if not for me, even me coming out, my mother took it up on herself to tell the rest of the family. And that was Mum's way of going, if you have a problem with Stephen, then you have a problem with me. She's always, and even I remember the story of her telling her when my grandfather, I think it was by the time Mum had Linda, the 3rd baby. And my grandfather, she said, my grandfather walked past the room and looked at Mum, and he just looked at Mum and he said, "You're just meant to be a mother." You know what I mean? So, and she was in every sense of the word. And still is. And, it still stresses me out.
How old were you when you came out to your mum?
I was 22. 2 little ducks, if anyone plays bingo.
Have
Yeah,
you
22.
done bingo calling?
No, but I've been bingo plenty of times. Yeah, I still remember one number to this day, number 89. But I wanted it for the $1,000 jackpot. And by about 20 calls, I got down to that one number, and my auntie sitting across from me going, "You're going to get it. I can feel it. Yeah, you're going to get it." And I wait and where that bastard never came.
But yeah, coming out in Queensland at 22.
Well, I was actually in Perth. Like that's so what had happened is that I'd got into the Aboriginal Music Theatre training program, which was like a 6-month course in Perth, and then from that I got into the music certificate of music theatre at the West Australian Academy of Performing Arts, and by then that had joined with the first course I'd went over, and then it became like the advanced diploma in Aboriginal Music Theatre, and then I got into the Music Theatre Bachelor of Arts course at WAPA. But while I was over there studying, so I'd be one thing over in Perth, chucking my fork around. And then I'd be back in Townsville, and I'd be, straight Stephen, straight to the nearest man. But what happened was that I was in Perth, and then Mum and my sister were coming over to Perth to study in blocks. So all of a sudden, this life I'd been living up in Perth, where I was like, being very social. I just pictured me walking down the street in like Hay Street Mall with my mother and my sister, and then my Noongar friends from the scene coming up. You big fork, who were you chucking your ring around with last night? You know what I mean? So I thought, that's probably not a good way for Mum to find out. So I thought, okay, if I'm going to tell Mum, how am I going to tell her? And this should have been, a sign that I was going to be a writer. But I started writing down, what I was going to say to Mum, like, when I was telling I was gay. But the next thing I know, turned it to a 4-page letter, handwritten. God, if I try to write 4 pages, I try to write 4 lines, my hand gets cramps. But a 4-page letter I'd written, and it was like about 12 o'clock at night. I went down, I'd posted this letter, and then I sat there in bed for like 3-4 hours thinking, oh God, what have I done? Like, I've torn the family apart. Like I'm going to have Mob going, Stephen's right, he's still Stephen, and then other mob go, no, what he's doing is wrong, and he shouldn't be doing that. And then I just pictured my family like arguing and all this infighting going on. And so I thought about, seriously, I thought about running back down to the mailbox, pouring in petrol, chucking in a match. But then I was like, other people have letters. Someone will be sending their grandmother a birthday card. So so I thought, no, she needs to know. And And so back in those days, I don't know if it still does, but back then it would take 4 days for mail to get from Perth to Townsville. And so I would ring Mum up, during those 4 days, but just kept reiterating how much I loved. I said, love you, love you, love you. And it got to a point where she goes, what's wrong with you? I said, what do you mean? She goes, something's up, something's bothering you. And I said, well, I've written you a letter about it, so you'll know once you get it. And she goes, okay. And lo and behold, she rings me a couple of days later, and she goes, I got your letter. And I said, and how are you? And she said, you're my son, I love you. Yeah, give her a round of applause.
Yes.
She'd be loving it knowing people in Alice Springs are clapping up for her.
Yes. And I bet she knew anyway.
She knew. She said she knew when I was born. I was like, well, how?
I think as a baby you probably had the most expressive hands.
Legs, everything. She used to, me and my sister were laughing because she was talking about how I wanted to play with this pretty little lace. And I would get an actor as that kid go, I just want to play with the lace.
Going to Perth, what an extraordinary experience, a different state out of Queensland. But you made so many great connections there. And I want to go on to, a lot of people know, Stephen's been touring with Bigger and Blacker. He's had the quiz show, Fab Original, on TV, black comedy and so forth, and done lots of writing. People might not know that he's also a playwright. But there was a web series when web series sort of began, and everyone's like, what's that? And I just love that many of our actors and creatives will find a platform that we haven't even considered. And so you go to Perth and you make these extraordinary connections. And one of them, of course, was Shari. And Shari Sebens, one of our great actors, and now she's a director and she's just extraordinary.
Yeah, she's awesome, Shari.
But you did a web series with her, which was, you got to Google it and have a look at it, because I can't sing, but she's a fan of Whitney Houston. And it is so funny because she is like, don't mess with a black woman when she's expressing herself. But it was an extraordinary vehicle to actually touch on the LBGTI community.
Yeah. It was. And so when we did the web series, and I tell you now, I got more excited for Shari Sebens than I did for me with this web series coming out, because I just knew it was a way people hadn't seen her before. But it's called A Chance Affair. But I just like Shari is what I love about Shari. She is such a passionate ally of the queer community. Like she's so awesome, and she was so proud to be a part of that. But even like singing, like she's a deadly singer. You should check it out. So if you want to, but the song I don't know, I probably can't say the name of the song.
You can you can beep it a bit.
Okay, but so so Shari does it's a dedication to Whitney Houston. And it's basically a song, just like it's a message to anybody who tries to sing Whitney Houston songs. And it's called All You Gammon Better Along.
So, yes, you do need to Google it. But there's a shift, don't want to give it away, but there's a shift at the end, and it's really clever. And it's taking that every day, looking at the language we use, and how we can shift it to actually give our perception. And I think that's what you do with Bigger and Blacker. Of course, many of us, I would imagine, have all seen Stephen's poetry online. Just some extraordinary...
It's funny you say it was even like, with the word slut. It's like, when some people would come up to me and I said, yeah, but you've got to realise too is that what I'm doing is that I'm doing it from our perspective where that word doesn't have gender. You know what I mean? We don't just apply it to women. If a man was chucking his fork around, we call him a slut. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or for inanimate objects. You know what I mean? Like if you slammed your foot in the car door, it'd be like, "Ooh, you slut door." You know what I mean? Like, so yeah, it's the way we also use words, and it is that our take on it, the way we perceive it, and even like saying Fab Original. You know what I mean? It's kind of that thing of going, which I can't actually take credit for, but my friend Caleb Meredith. We were actually sitting around just being stupid one night, and he came up with Fab Original and bust out laughing, and that's when I wrote the song and everything. But it was that thing of just taking that thing, because I think often words like Aboriginal stuff like that, they're spoken almost with the stain on them. And so it's about taking those words, it's about wiping away that stain and showing the beauty of what's there.
Is there, out of all, I mean, there's so many, but there's some that are so poignant and you listen to it, but you really have to listen. Because, often we'll read something or see something and we're already assuming what the tagline's going to be. So I know you did a poem recently, and I guess, can you tell us those ones that you want to talk about now? What was it? Was it the political environment, the cultural environment that makes you go, I've got to write this because it will have an effect?
No, it's funny, like when ideas pop into my head, it's just like, say for example, my poem, I'm a Black Fella.
Yeah.
That purely came about because, my mate now I was talking about how to change the font size to fit all my language groups. But, so he was like waiting for Mob to send in articles, but he hadn't received them yet, and he said slack fellas. And I said, did you say slack fellas or black fellas? And he said, oh, slack fellas. But then my head started thinking about how stereotypes put on black fellas about us being slack fellas. And so that's when it came up with, I'm a black fella. Not a drunk, criminal, uneducated, unemployed, welfare-dependent slack fella. And if you try to tell me different, well, you might just get a smack fella. Do you want me to do it?
Would everyone, I think we would love you to do it. I was leading with that question, so you do it.
Let me wet my whistle. Better stand up.
Oh, laughter, don't
look,
we love it?
Take you with the body. No. For anyone who doesn't know that joke, I always talk about people like when I do the shake my cheeks. I thought people were clapping, but it was just my cheeks going. I'll look at cameras. I'm a black fella. Not a drunk, criminal, uneducated, unemployed, welfare-dependent slack fella. And if you try to tell me different, well, you might just get a smack fella. Not that I condone violence. I just don't condone silence. And when people try to tell me about what it means to be an Aborigine, with those stupid-ass jokes, stereotypes, and Discovery Channel mentalities, well, I'm afraid I have to speak up and let you know about me. See, I ain't what you've seen in your travel magazine. And I haven't got the look from your history book. Noble? Maybe. Savage? No. Unless you're talking about my words and the way that they flow, but this isn't about style. It's about attitudes. It's about people who formulate their ill-informed views, who switch on the TV and then suddenly, out of the blue, they know all about me. Oh, he comes from that race involved in that car chase. It's such a disgrace what they do to the place. I mean, seriously. In this day and age, you want to learn about me, you need to learn to engage. Don't base your decisions on things that you see. Make up your mind by talking to me. I won't rob you or beg, and I won't try to fight you. But if you're a man and you're hot, I might like you. Yes, that's right, I'm single, I'm using my rhymes to try get me a man. But enough about that, because I'm here to teach. To beseech, not preach, about the heights we could reach. If you stood by our sides and simply just talking of some of the times in our footsteps you walked, then maybe you'd see we're not young and free. We're ancient and chained from the stains that remain from a past that's never been dealt with properly because people don't get off their ass. Instead, they'll read articles, switch on the news, and somehow through media the lies become truth. Just like when people see a drunk black man on the street and somehow from that black man becomes me. But the drunk white man who stumbles and falls, he's not a reflection of a race at all. So open your mind, because perception's a lie. Learn what it is to not see with your eyes, because I'm a black fella. Not a drunk, criminal, uneducated, unemployed, welfare-dependent slack fella, and I'm trying to put your minds on the right track, fellas. So question yourselves. Challenge ideals, start a revolution. Are we part of a world's problem or the solution? Because whether or not I'm right, or whether or not I'm wrong, inevitably, all of this, it's all about our song.
Judah, fantastic, Stephen. On the spot like that. Thank
I was
you.
worried I'd stuff it up.
It- and just listening to those words, I mean, I could almost see it as a letter in the Australian for Dutton. I mean, it's just listening to those words.
Do you know my nickname for him? What rhymes with Dut?
Okay. From all your training, how do you actually, like I could hit you now and I know you'd do another poem or a song. How do you remember, because all that dialogue?
Well, I mean, writing helps. I mean, writing the piece, but it's also rhythm and stuff like that. I mean, look at Mob. That's how we pass knowledge down, was through song. When you look at them ads, they got the phone numbers and that. We've been doing that for thousands of years. You know what I mean? So that's part of it too, and that's why when I talk about, see, I don't view poetry or spoken word just as like speaking, but I actually see it as music because it's rhythm. Also, and so it's that rhythm that helps you. It embeds it and it imprints on you. So, yeah. So writing it, but also finding the rhythm of something, and that's what life is to me. Even when I write, I know in that first line whether it's going to be a song or whether it's going to be a poem. Sometimes it'll be a poem that turns into a song, but usually just from the rhythm of that very first line of what I've said, whether it's going to be a monologue or a script or, something like that.
And as you say that, I'm thinking of the production, Bigger and Blacker. Is there anyone in the audience who actually saw this production?
Oh, look, one solid.
One solid sister up the back, thank you.
Hey, you ashamed there too for the like. Don't be ashamed, be proud you saw it.
Oh, there you go. And look, it did tour the country. Did you come to the Territory?
Well, Darwin. We only just did the Darwin Festival.
Darwin.
But it was meant to happen with Alice, but I can't remember what happened there, whether we couldn't just make it here or what it was. But, because I would have loved to have brought it here. Yeah.
So, Bigger and Blacker is where you've taken that dialogue and actually created, you're sitting up on a piano. It actually reminded me of Michelle Pfeiffer in The Baker.
The Fabulous Baker Boys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure you didn't have that in mind when you jumped up on that
I could have.
piano.
I mean, I remember. For some reason, that sticks in my head. That thing of her caught on the piano. But no, I just think it was me just wanting to be stupid and being at the Sydney Opera House and being able to lay up on a piano and chucking my leg up. I think that's.
And how did audiences respond? Because it had, again, listening to that dialogue and going, oh.
No, the audiences were beautiful. It was, and because I speak about a lot of things in it. Like I spoke about, I speak about like the racism, homophobia, but also mental health. Because after black comedy and the fame and all that kind of stuff, I did not cope very well with that. And one of the hardest things I had, like where people were coming up to me going, "Oh, you're someone now," but me going, "But I've always been someone." You know what I mean? Like it was that kind of the way people say to you, "Don't let fame change you," but people change around you. And they start treating you differently. And so you've got to re-navigate how you sit in the world and how you react and, and respond. And it's still things I deal with. Like sometimes I'll go through these things where I can feel like everything's too overwhelming. It's too much. And I hate being like that. Or I shouldn't say hate. As my girlfriend would say, never say hate. But, I just don't like being like that because I was always a very social person. And I always loved going out. And I always loved talking to people and meeting strangers. But then fame kind of, it changes that in a way then, and how people, like I equated it to racism in the sense that people now have an expectation of you of how to act, of who you are, and they want you to act that way. And it's also that change of power structure. So, before I kind of had the choice when I would make people laugh, but now people were coming up to me demanding I make them laugh all the time. Like I'd be at funerals mourning family members and people would be going, "Okay, make us laugh." And it's kind of like, well, hold up. And, then I have people going, "Oh, can you be my mentor?" And it's like, well, I'm grieving my grandfather here. So, it's that kind of thing of what fame did. So, so everyone kind of found something to connect with. And I'd even have like men coming up going, "Oh man, can I just give you a hug?" And say, "Thank you for talking about that," because now I feel I've got permission to talk about that. Because I think, a lot of men feel that they can't talk about stuff that we go through. And, there's this perception that you got to be strong and people don't realize that sometimes it's strong just to say, "I'm not okay." That it takes strength to go, "I'm not feeling good." You know what I mean? So, the way audiences reacted afterwards, it was, it was beautiful. And I'm a hugger, which isn't good during COVID. But yeah, no, it was a lot of hugs afterwards. So no, I love that.
But I do see that, and I've seen where it is so hard to be almost 24/7, and the expectations not only from the general public but family and community, and I know that's difficult, but still I see you with that generosity. And I go, okay, you could say no, but you don't. We're sitting in the airport the other day, and this has happened a few times. I always bump into Stephen
Yeah, somewhere.
in airports and things. And there was a group, and it's wonderful. There was a group of our young people, and they saw Stephen, and he went over and did a selfie with them. So that made their day, and they were so excited. Why do you be so generous with that?
I think it's more so like in cases like that too. That if mob feel that they're not allowed to ask or they can't ask, then you know what I mean. Like I'm not so generous with people who are demanding, but I've kind of learned to say no there. If people because if there's one thing I've learned, when people want to take, they can just take, and literally till you have nothing left. But when you see mob, and me being a young Aboriginal kid, I've seen that thing too of sometimes being spoken to in a way that makes you feel that you're not worthy enough or you're not good enough. That's why I'd always say to my nieces and nephews, never let anyone ever speak to you like you don't belong where you stand. Where you stand is where your ancestors have walked for tens of thousands of years, so you have every right to be where you are. But I met my cousin, like me and my cousin, we went to a pub on Magnetic Island. And so Brenton's very fair, so you would think Brenton's a white fellow, but Brenton would go up to the bar and the lady was like, "Oh, hey love, how you going? Yeah, what can I get you? And then it was my turn to shout. Then when I went to the bar, she was like, "Yeah, what do you want?" You know what I mean? It's that kind of thing. So I understand too how mob can feel that shame thing about So when mob are like that, but even if it's not mob, but like I've had other mob just come up to me and like, "Oh, excuse me, come on, yeah, you're right, of course you can." Like don't feel like you know what I mean? It's the people who just come up and shove the phone in your face and go, "Oh my God, look who I found."
Yeah, I hear you on that. It's and particularly our young men and women, they have to navigate every day of how, if they get in that car or if they walk in Kmart or whatever they do, there is assumptions. And so I think what your work does do is give young people value. And I think it is often the rhythm and the story of the song that captures that particular audience. But then you've got such a wide range of audiences, particularly with the old aunties. So how hard is it for you to be on stage and all of a sudden they're having a yarn up the back about what you're doing? Because they're not used to being in the theatre, and so it's like watching TV. They're just yarning about the show. How do you cope with that when you're on stage?
Oh no, I just keep the show going. I mean, unless it was too much. I mean, I had a heckler in Sydney, but he's a black boy, but he obviously just wanted attention and just loved kind of the more I reacted to him, the more attention he got. But it made me laugh because at the end of the show, and it happened to be the night we recorded it. But I went, "Thank you, City. You've been a wonderful audience, except for you."
We're going to go to questions shortly. So if you've got any questions, pop your hand up and we'll have a mic come and you can ask a question. But there's so much on your plate at the moment. But what are the projects that you're really wanting to do in the coming year?
Writing. I just want to kind of get back because I've been doing so much performing, and I am getting, at that. I mean, 50 is not old, but I'm 50 in 2 years' time. So.
Oh, you don't look it. You're so fab original.
Nah. But I kind of directing is where I want to go. I would really love to direct film, and I've yet to write a feature film. So that's what I want to do next. I would love to do a feature film.
You should call up Taika.
Oh, that's why I got his email. I've thought about it.
And with that writing, I mean, I know you come from that, finding the fun and what's the word? It's a challenge to write those words sometimes because they do bring up trauma. They bring up, I guess, the truth of the history of this country, and you've done that a lot in your poetry. When you're writing, and particularly that you want to write film and stuff, is it going to be comedy, or do you want to move into a more dramatic, tragedy, serious?
Tell you the truth, when I write, I never really. I mean, unless it's going to be something like sci-fi. But I mean, if I'm writing, because I think with blackfellas, we laugh so much, and we laugh at in really serious times, because that's become a coping mechanism for us. We have to see the funny side of things. You know what I mean? Like, I remember being asked. I was on a panel for queer comedy at the Wheeler Centre in Melbourne, and Tom Ballard. Do you know the comedian Tom Ballard? Yeah. So Tom was moderating, and he asked me the question. He goes, "Do you think a comedy is born out of oppression?" And I said, "Well, yeah." And I said, I think blackfellas, we've had to laugh at some horrible things. We've had to see the funny side to cope with it." And then I told them a story about a friend of mine who got gay bashed. But I said, because my friend, when I went, saw him in hospital, and he went, "Yeah, I shouldn't laugh." He said, "But I was thinking about me afterwards and the way I was walking. I was like, like that." And one person in the audience, about a couple of hundred, they bust out laughing, but no one else made a noise. So that one person went real quiet. And then Tom Ballard goes, "So you were laughing at him getting gay bashed?" And I went, "No." I said, "No, it was more about the way he was howling and making the noise." And he goes, "Yeah, but he got gay bashed." And I said, "Yeah, but my point is that we had to see the funny side of that, because if we just saw the sorrow and the tragedy in that," I said, "we were getting cased by that, and we would get lost in that sadness. And so we have to laugh and we have to find a way out of it." But in my head, I'm thinking, I bet you that one person was a black fella.
I bet they were a black
And then
fella.
sure enough, we were in the cafe afterwards, and this Noongar auntie come up to me. She reckon, "How I laughed, but no one else laughed, so I went real quiet. I reckon I knew it was a black fella."
On that note, if anyone's got a question, Anya Parr's going to take this mic, so I can't talk anymore. But Stephen, while we're waiting, if there's anything, we've only got 10 minutes for questions because we finish at 7 o'clock. There's another discussion here at 7:30 with Richard Franklin. But also, I hope if you stick around tonight, I've just really got to plug our music stage. We've got Radical Son, David Lihar, with David Bridie, and it is extraordinary. I heard their sound check this afternoon, so that's on at 9 o'clock. But anyway, I'm going to hand you to the fabulous, now that's fab original, the fabulous Anya
Actually,
Parr.
they're waiting for that microphone too.
Any questions?
Don't be shame. Oh, there one. Oh.
Hi, Stephen. My name is Shepataya, and I come from Ngariman country, which is west of the Northern Territory. And I just love how you were able to take something that was very bad, and turn it into something positive. And I would like to ask if you had any advice for young writers and all that stuff.
I thought for me, really, I think it's just to see the beauty in everything. You know what I mean? And I don't think it's about, I'm very lucky with my family, my family growing up was always very much about, don't ever let anybody else tell you that they're better than you. But at the same time, never think you're better than anyone else. At the same time, don't go around thinking you're gonna don't stink. When the things about because there was a lot of stuff that trying to make us mob feel bad about ourselves, but there's so much for us to be proud of.
Yeah.
And there's so much beauty within us. There's so much laughter within us. There's so much joy within us. There's so much love within us. And I think that when you kind of, just remember that too when you write. But also, it's also about connection and understanding, I'm only am the way I am. I'm only a black fella because of my mob. Do you know what I mean? The way they inform me.
Yeah.
And it's understanding our connection and being able to see, whether the silliness in it or the joy in that or the love in that as well. Always take note of that. Never stop loving life.
Yeah.
Always see the beauty in everything. Because I think that plays a big part in, when you're writing stuff.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Yeah, bro. Shepherdtire, was
Any
it?
more questions, just raise your hand.
Shepherdtire, was that the name? That's a deadly name, bro.
Any questions? No? Don't be shy.
No, don't be shy. Pump.
Oh, there's a
Oh,
question
one
at
up the back. Now, one up the black.
Whereabouts? Oh. Would you
How
like
would the
to come
microphone work that
closer?
far?
Yeah.
Hi, Stephen. It's so amazing to meet you. I love all your shows, and I believe that what you're doing transcends all black cultures around the world. I'm from Zimbabwe, and your comedy and your documentaries have really helped even our culture as well. So thank you for all the work that you do. It's not a question, it's just a comment, an honorary comment. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank you. You got to make a black fella go red. I'll finish with a little tap move. You want to see a little tap move? You might not be able to hear it, probably, but we'll see how we go. We've got to make sure these speakers don't come flying off. How?
Woohoo! And what a note to end on. Can we please thank Stephen Oliver? Just a joy. And thank you all for coming. And particularly, I'd really like to acknowledge those young men in the front. Thank you for coming. I hope you enjoyed it.
And please also thank Rhoda Roberts, our wonderful curator, and we hope you have a wonderful night. Thank you.